What's going on, everybody? Jarrett Hoffman here with another HBCU Sports exclusive interview. The NFL draft is this Thursday, and we got a bunch of HBCU prospects looking to hear their name called on draft night, potentially getting some undrafted free agent signings. So we're here to cover all of that this week, and I have a special guest with me that is going to help me out with all of that. This is a guy who is known as one of the co-creators of Draft HBCU Players. He's also a writer for Afro News and the Seattle Seahawks. Maliik Obee. Thank you, Maliik, for taking some time to speak with me and breaking down everything ahead of the NFL draft.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be on, man. I'm really excited about this week coming up. The draft is here again. I like our chances.
Absolutely. So before we get into any individual players, just give me your overall outlook on the NFL draft and the prospects of some of our players that could potentially hear their names called on Thursday or Friday or Saturday.
I think every year there's a couple of guys that are either in the draftable category or a good number of guys that are looked at possibly to go undrafted. This year, I think that we have a really balanced class because at the top is the most important position in the game, quarterback. You have Davius Richard, North Carolina Central. He got a little bit banged up at the HBCU Legacy Bowl, but he's back. He's back, and he's been talking to teams. And he's got the resume. He's got the tape. So I think that having a quarterback in place that is respected across the football world for his talent, for his potential, I think it says a lot, and it forces people to look at the rest of the class itself and what's coming out from the black colleges at the D1 and the D2 level. So I think that this year the difference is that there's overall consensus interest in Davius Richard and what he can be. And I think that that's important. It's about, reestablishing the respect for the black college quarterback because he would be the first one drafted since the late Tavares Jackson. So it's a lot of history on the line. I mean, I think that overall, however it comes, this kid should be playing football on Sunday. And leading the class at the quarterback position, like I said, it's just overall important to show that we have talent across the board at every position, and we do in this draft class.
Yeah, so you bring up Davius Richard, and he's been the talk of the town. He was the MVP of the HBCU Legacy Bowl. As you brought up, he had a unfortunate injury, dislocated his ankle, but fortunately he was on an interview with Steve Weish at the NFL Network, him and Bucky Brooks, and he talked about how teams are still inquiring about him. They asked about the status of his ankle. We've heard that he could potentially be available for training camps and that he's still getting that interest. So he said himself that it's just working out the flexibility of the ankle. But I think the thing that is interesting is that we have a lot of teams that are looking for a quarterback that could potentially be looking towards a quarterback. New England has talked about potentially looking for a quarterback. Dallas potentially looking for the next player after Dak Prescott, should he not return. But this is a loaded draft class for quarterbacks. You got Drake May, you got J.J. McCarthy, you got Jaden Daniels, who just won the Heisman, Michael Penix Jr., who just led Washington to the national championship game. What is that competition at that quarterback position? How much does that hurt Davius, and how much could that potentially help Davius?
I think that for him, the level of interest that he's gotten and the level of media attention that he's gotten first of all, as a FCS quarterback, but just overall, I've seen articles on him in the NFL Network, CBS, et cetera, so many places, and talked to different people that have been interested in seeing him and watching his development over the years, is that this class does have a lot of talent at the quarterback position at the top. I think what's interesting about Davius is that he's in the conversation for the mid-tier quarterbacks in this draft class. And when I say mid-tier, I don't mean mid-tier talent. I mean, after you talked about the first 5 or 6 QBs that are likely going to go in the first round or so, these are the guys that are the next batch of quarterbacks that will be taken on day 2 or day 3. And even with the injury, Davius has gotten a lot of interest. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the dual threat ability that truly and athleticism, of course, that truly makes teams wonder, okay, well, what do we really have here? And I think that's what makes him such an interesting player, because I think there are a good 5 or 6 quarterbacks that will go in the top 50, maybe 7. But after looking at those guys, and this is with no bias, I definitely think that he's amongst the best in the quarterback
group. And that's great when you think about some of the. Now, look, what I'm about to say is I'm not comparing him to these players. So for anybody watching, this is not a comparison. This is just an observation. When you look at some of the best quarterbacks in the league, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Josh Allen. Though you got Josh Allen, who is a big body, who is able to command in the pocket. He's a guy that can, if he steps outside the pocket, he's able to extend plays, and he's able to, get his give his receivers time to get open. You got Patrick Mahomes, who can literally work magic wherever he is on the floor with the ball in his hand. And then you got Lamar Jackson, who is the same kind of player. I look at Davius Richard and I say, although he has a way to go to be looked at among those players, and he may never be looked at as among those players, but he has that similar kind of skill set. And we saw that on command in his one drive in the HBCU Legacy Bowl. We saw that in 2022 when he led North Carolina Central to the Celebration Bowl. And for what it's worth, we saw it this past regular season, even though North Carolina Central didn't win the MEAC. He has that skill set. We know that he would be able to maximize that if he was in the right situation. Do you think that with him having that skill set, it gives him a leg up, knowing that he is a guy that has worked on being a pocket passer? He is a guy that already has the ability to make plays with his legs. Do you think that as an asset for him?
Absolutely. I think that is an asset for him. And I think that one thing you kind of touched on is the progress that he's made over time. There's been a difference between him and a lot of HBCU quarterbacks in the past, recent past, is that there hasn't been as many quarterbacks that have shown such great improvement from year 1 to year 4 at the FCS level, just overall, as him. I mean, this guy has become a more accurate passer. He's become a better deep passer, and he's become a better passer on a run. So I think that with that showing that you can get better, that you're teachable, is important, because it's not just that he got better. A lot of guys get better, but the statistics wise is another thing. That's why he's in the conversations. The numbers have to stand out, and his numbers stand out. This is a guy that had several seasons with double-digit rushing touchdowns. And, I mean, passing-wise, to go above 60% completions at the collegiate level is important, FCS or FBS. So I think that just continuing to seeing that growth and seeing a player that can be molded into so many players, like you were saying, maybe not that group, but just saying he is a moldable player, and he is a guy that you have seen can improvise. And that's what it comes down to. He can improvise and make things happen with his legs, with his arms, create some opportunities for himself, create some opportunities for his guys to shake. So he's a pretty dynamic guy. I don't think that is an overreaction of some of the things that we're saying, because we've had plenty of examples of good HBCU quarterbacks that weren't getting these looks and getting these opportunities. And when he's getting them, he's making the most of them.
Yeah, and when you talk about overreacting, we said the same thing about Aqeel Glass. We thought that Aqeel Glass was going to be, all he needed was that one shot. And unfortunately, since the New Orleans Breakers, the UFL, folded, he hasn't been able to get that opportunity. But we hope the best for Davius Richard. He's looking to be the first player selected in the NFL draft since 2006, the late great Davius Jackson, who actually had a solid NFL career, most notably with the Seattle Seahawks, led them to the playoffs. And if people remember Marshawn Lake's Beastquake run, he was the starting quarterback for that team and was on the Legion of Boom when they won the Super Bowl as the backup quarterback. So I'm excited to see what the ceiling is for Davius Richard. But moving on, another guy that has gotten a lot of press on the defensive side is Sundata Anderson. Now, he has gotten a lot of press. I believe it was The Athletic that put out the best freak athletes in collegiate football. He was on that list. There was a lot of list of the FCS players that can potentially be drafted. He's been projected to potentially be selected in the 7th round. He had an impressive performance in the NFLPA Bowl, I believe, and it was just
Shrine Bowl.
Yeah. No, the Shrine, excuse me, the East West Shrine Bowl. Right. And he was just torturing offensive linemen, was just getting to the backfield with ease, drew a couple of holding penalties. And he's a guy that I'm excited to see his potential of potentially getting drafted. What do you think is the ceiling for well, first of all, do you think that there's what is the possibility of him being drafted, if not in the 7th round, maybe even in the 6th or maybe the 5th round? And if so, what is his ceiling as a player?
Man, this is a guy I've been watching for a few years, and it's just great to see him get the attention. He's another guy like Davius that has been afforded opportunities and made the most of them. I mean, this guy went to the Shrine Bowl and absolutely dominated. I mean, it goes to show that there are players at the HBCU level that truly develop from year one and have the size and have the skills along with it. This is a big guy. You know what I'm saying? He can move around on the defensive line, man. He got a lot of looks at the Shrine Bowl, moving in 3-tech, 5-tech, 7. Really was moving around well in the interior defensive line. He's got a quick first step. He's so strong. He's very moldable. I don't know if he'll be a 7th round pick. I mean, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic for him. I think that there's so many guys in the league that are, that have that length and that strength. It's a great moldable canvas for a lot of teams. I think he can go somewhere like round 5. Honestly, in that 5 to 7 range is what I would predict. You know what I'm saying? But I definitely think he's hearing his name called. And I definitely think that he has the opportunity to be more than a special teams player. I think that he can really be a good pass rusher, man. I think that it's a high ceiling for him. I really like Sonny a lot. I'm really excited to see where he goes because I think he has a lot of versatility. He has he has a really quick first step. He has really, really violent hands. He's a playmaker. It's a lot of HBCU talent, but that's one guy I feel like will definitely have his name called this weekend.
Yeah, so when you think about a lot of the HBCU defenders that have come out and have made it to the NFL, a lot of those guys, what put them over the top is they were able to play multiple positions. James Houston was a guy who played linebacker in college, and he's in the NFL now. He's an edge. You got Marquise Bell, who's a safety in college, and he's with the Dallas Cowboys now, and he's playing linebacker for most of the time. There's a lot of guys that are able to make it to the NFL is because they are able to play multiple positions. Do you believe that Sundata is a guy that could potentially fit if he's not an edge where he's most comfortable, that he can transition to maybe linebacker or maybe even in the interior if he's able to he might have to put on some size for that. But do you believe that, Sundata is one of those guys that could be able to do that?
Absolutely. I absolutely do think he does. Do think he is. Like you said, he was on the Bruce Feldman freak list because, he's 6'4.5", 6'5". I'm not sure the correct measurements from the Shrine Bowl, but he's a big guy. I've seen him in person. I think he can add some more weight to that frame, but he's a really good athlete. So I don't think that it's out of the realm. And I think that he's shown it at the Shrine Bowl where he kicked inside even more, where it was like, he's just flat out dominant. You know what I'm saying? It's really hard to keep somebody in front of this guy. I think that he has the versatility to get to the league, and they just try him at a couple of different spots and just see where it goes. But definitely think he'll have the athleticism and the wits to be able to make the transition, whatever it is that is asked of him.
Yeah, and I'm I'm really excited to see him, man, because I don't know if anybody watched that Shrine Bowl. You need to go look at the highlights because he was absolutely fantastic. Just speed off the line. Just as soon as the snap is gone, he's gone. Like, and it was just it's so impressive to see, because edge rushers are supposed to be able to do that. But when you see a guy like him who admittedly may have a little bit more work to do at an edge position that is at a premium at the NFL level, he is a guy that I believe is, as you say, moldable, and a guy that can fit in within a system, if not be on a practice squad who may be able to make it to a final roster and be a backup, or you could put him in as a starter. We saw the same thing with James Houston. James Houston was a guy that sat for, I believe, the first, 10, 11 games of the season in his rookie year. Then he came in and in 8 games had, I believe, like 7 or 8 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
That's unheard of, and I think he's a guy that can have a similar impact like that. I know that James Houston, what he did was an anomaly, but do you believe that Sundata Anderson can have that kind of impact for a team to where he can immediately be in a lineup? Or is he a guy that you believe will have to, be a second option and potentially find his chance later down the line?
So is another 2 guys that kind of fit that mold, that are big like that, around 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260. And that's former Norfolk State alum and Shrine Bowl alum participant Deshaun Dixon, who's with the Jaguars. And then you have from Lane College, defensive end Andrew Farmer. So he was with the Chargers, and these are guys who weren't the most refined off the edge, but I mean they managed to stick around on 2 teams that are loaded with talent in the front 7. You know what I'm saying? So, moving up the practice squad, getting that chance to be elevated, and just having that year of coaching, even if it's not immediate opportunity to start. Like you said, James Houston got a chance to when his number was called. He was absolutely ready. But however the circumstances may go, it is a year of tutelage in that particular system. So for a guy like Sonny Anderson, who some teams might look at similar to a Leonard Floyd, who is a little bit more lankier, but they both have really long arms. They're tall. They were great athletes. I mean, Leonard Floyd is a freak athlete. I mean, off the edge, he's got crazy bend. He can drop back in coverage. He can do a lot. And that's being asked of pretty much a lot of guys with that size playing defensive end / outside linebacker at the collegiate level. So it's something to take note of. I think that those 2 guys are possibilities for him in year 1, where I think he will get drafted, but I think that he can be he'll either, depending on the system, I think that I would love to see him get a chance to play defensive end. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to see him as a stand-up linebacker. I just want to see him rushing the passer. Now, if he's asked to move in, play a little bit more inside, and he's asked to put on 20 pounds, 25, 30 pounds, you know what I'm saying? That's a big adjustment. And I think that will require him, of course, to go to the practice squad. Either way, I think that this is not, and this is like we say, this is not biased. This is a kid that has been nationally recognized. And of course, he's set the HBCU world on fire for several years. You know what I'm saying? He is the truth. I mean, I think he has a pretty good chance of doing something in the league, just it depends on what teams see him as and where they want to try him out at. And that's what is really interesting, because now it's interesting. It's like we know that he has a good chance to end up on the NFL roster, but what is the fit? Where does he land ultimately, and how do they look at how they use him? And that's the interesting part. It's pretty cool to see. It's pretty good. That's the part of the countdown that I love. It's like having guys that we know that's kind of like there, but just where do they end up? So I think he's one of those guys.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Andrew Farmer, because he was a guy that was in a competitive battle in the preseason for that edge spot and for the Chargers. You know, he initially was signed to the practice squad. He didn't make the final 53 or 52, and he was on the practice squad, worked his way up as the Chargers went through some injuries. And another guy that I want to mention when we talk about that is Isaiah Land. Isaiah Land was a guy that, you know, if you look at Cowboys fans, when he got released by the Cowboys, or when he wasn't picked up in the final 52 by the Cowboys, everybody in that fan base was, you know, crying like, why would you not re-sign this man? You know what I mean? Because he's a guy that, you know, can be an edge, or he can be a linebacker as well. And then when he got picked up by the Indianapolis Colts, who went through what they went through, you know, when they released Shaq Leonard, you know, like, you know, it's all about, you know, finding that right fit and finding the opportunity, you know what I mean? But moving on, we want to talk about another, staying on the defensive end, you know, a spot that is at a premium for HBCUs is corners, you know, and two of the top corners that could potentially hear their name called Thursday, Friday, or Saturday is Mikey Victor and Willie Drew. You know, when you look at those two guys, who do you think is more likely to hear their name called? And if maybe they're both, you know, to hear their name called, who do you see going first?
That's tough. I'm a firm believer, and just the numbers prove it, that, you know, you go to the Senior Bowl as HBCU guy, it's like a 9 times out of 10 chance you'll get drafted. I mean, Willie is a freak athlete. I mean, I know that people's ideas of running 4.4 is, I mean, running 40 is just 4.2. This guy is a hell of an athlete. He is a ball. And he went through a couple of growing pains real quick at the Senior Bowl. But I think a lot of teams at that event in Mobile were able to say, we can work with him. You know, it's tough, because I thought all along that Willie would go somewhere in day 3. But Mikey is a really good cornerback that has size, and he's a cornerback that can get even better. They both can get even better, but I think with Mikey, size is important. I think he's been a dark horse in the race that kind of like was a word of mouth thing. Word of mouth, like they got this big tall kid at Alabama State, and then the tape backed it up. He worked his way to Hula, worked his way to Shrine, did his thing at Shrine Bowl, and he looks like the part. He looks the part. He really fits the mold. It's the crunch time. It's this week. I'm gonna just have to say, I think Mikey goes first, because size matters, and they're both really versatile. But man, 6'3", 200 plus, he's got some potential. I just think that there's a lot of teams, the Seahawks, the Colts, the Raiders, the Bucks, the Lions, a lot of teams that would love to have a guy like that in their system, and with that size that they can try to see if he can fit at safety. But he's a true corner, man. I think Mikey's going to go first. I think they're both going to hear their names called. I might be wrong about this, but I think Mikey's going to go first at this point, because I think it's just out there. Like, man, for the same love that you get for Cam Hart for Notre Dame because of his size, his versatility, his potential at 6'3", 200 something, a little bit faster, but they both are really good corners. And I'm telling people, like, look, I really like Cam Hart, but this kid, Mikey Victor, is just as good as Cam, if not better. So I think that the word has gotten out. The people have seen tape. They've seen him at the showcase games. And he's come from an athletic family. His dad played D1 ball. His brother, Azim Victor, played for the Raiders, the Seahawks, and a couple other teams, UW alum. I think Mikey's going to go first. I think Willie's going to go somewhere 5 through 7. I think they both go somewhere 5 through 7, but I think at this point, Mikey's going to go first.
Yeah, when you look at both of these guys, they both were a part of postseason play. You already brought up, Willie Drew and the Senior Bowl. Not the best representation of what his potential is. There was, footage of him in practice getting beat on a run on a route, and in the Senior Bowl, the first touchdown of the game, he was covering the receiver who actually caught that pass. But take it from me, as someone who is a CIAA alum who watched a lot of CIAA football, Virginia State was a ball hawk team. You do not throw in his direction. I said that many times throughout the season.
And those numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. I mean, he has some ups and downs, and I watched that film. I watched the game live. He got scored on the first play. First drive, but he has some plays that he made, and everything is not about pass deflections. It's about understanding your keys, where you're supposed to be in different positions, and a lot of things. I thought that he overall didn't allow in the game. He didn't allow that play to hold on to that for the rest of the game. I thought he finished out pretty good. I am a big fan of Willie Drew. Like you said, we've seen plenty of CIAA games in the crunch time. He showed up. And you don't get that many picks. You don't get that many pass deflections, because you aren't pretty decent. Willie is a good corner, and I think that a lot of teams seen that and seen something in him, and I'm interested to see where he goes. He's hungry. I think they're both hungry. I think that they lead a really good group of corners. I think another guy, I don't know if he'll get drafted, but he has that same size as Victor, D2 guy, and coming out of Benedict, Josh is a pretty good corner, but he's just an overall athlete. He's another guy, Josh Hayward, another guy that's with his size. His size complements his potential and his abilities. But between those two, I think, like I said, Mikey, I think he's going first. Willie's going second. But Josh Hayward is another guy because of his size and potential, what he could be. Even if he's just a special teams player, for a Benedict guy to get that opportunity, another Benedict guy to get that opportunity would be major. And I think he's a name right down in that undrafted free agent category, camp shot, something, because, yeah, he's another big DB that can possibly make it work. Just got to get some refinery.
Yeah, I want to stick with Benedict real quick. You brought up Josh Hayward, a guy that I'm looking at that could potentially, be in that undrafted free agent market, or maybe even the UFL, CFL market. Lubert Denalis. I have been a fan of Lubert Denalis since Benedict's first championship run. He is a guy that I believe, fell a little bit under the radar, with all the names that have, come out of the draft, particularly from the Division I level. But he is a guy that don't let his size fool you. This guy is a playmaker. When he lines up, you need to have attention on him wherever he is on the field. If he's on the left, you need to make sure you need to make sure what side of the line he is on, and make sure you know where he is before that ball is snapped, because he is in the backfield at the blink of an eye. For a guy that size to be able to move the way he moves, he is absolutely incredible, and I'm excited for the prospect of what he could potentially do. If he is an undrafted free agent, what is the best situation for him, Lubert Denalis?
Well, like you said, we don't live that close to South Carolina, so seeing him at the Legacy Bowl in person was the second time I've gotten to see him live. And from last year to this year it's just amazing to see a guy that is a little bit under 6 feet and a little bit under 300 pounds who can move that well. When the Legacy Bowl came around, NFL ran a story on some of the top HBCU guys at Legacy Bowl, and he got a comp that was very impressive to Grady Jarrett from the Atlanta Falcons. And that's a guy that any interior guy will want to be compared to, but Lubert has primarily played on the edge. He's been a force off the edge, and he came to New Orleans and showed like, hey, I can line up anywhere and be disruptive. I mean, if his team would have won, he would have 100% been an MVP, and I think he should have really been in the conversation anyway. I mean, he's a flat out force, and he's a little bit undersized. I wouldn't go as far as comparing him to Aaron Donald, who is by far one of the greatest players ever and one of the greatest undersized players ever. But with Aaron Donald's story and his success, he paves the way for so many guys who are a little bit under 6 feet or a little bit smaller than prototypical size, play interior defensive line or the edge, for teams to give guys like Lubert Denalis a shot. And for a guy like that, from D2 Benedict, after this amazing run that they've had over the last 2 years, 3 really, because they turned that program around, Coach Chinsbury, who's now at South Carolina State, Lubert Denalis was a major factor, if not the biggest. So he set the D2 world on fire. He came up here, came to New Orleans for Legacy Bowl, played with the D1 FCS boys, all the transfers from wherever, and he flat out dominated. So I think that there's going to be some interest in him, and probably right after the draft, he'll be one of those D2 HBCU guys to get that phone call, an opportunity to show up and show out somewhere. I don't know which team I can particularly see him with. I was going to say a team like the Raiders because he's a guy that has so much power in his hands, but he's a quick pass rusher. And he can always, I think he can put on some weight, even more weight. And he's proven that, hey, I might be short, but I can get into the backfield. I can really make a push. He can do a lot of things on that defensive line. So, I think that that's a guy that it wouldn't hurt any team to take a flyer out on him and just see what they can do with him because he's shown he can flat out dominate.
Yeah, and so now he's one of many sleepers that could potentially, see themselves as an undrafted free agent or, as a, UFL, CFL. Let's talk about some other sleeper picks. Who do you believe are some guys that may be flying under the radar that, could garner some interest from some teams, and if not, be an undrafted free agent, could have a professional career elsewhere?
Sleeper. I would say sleeper to me would be a guy like Tariq Stewart from North Carolina A&T, offensive tackle. It's a mean streak, very physical guy, finishes through the whistle, plays through the whistle, pretty athletic, FBS guy that, made his bones and really did his thing on that A&T line. Sleeper to me would be Darian Brokenberg, Howard defensive end. He went to the Commanders' local pro day, 2 weeks ago, week or two ago, with Aneem Dankwa and somebody else. But yeah, Darian Brokenberg, man, I think that he has that size that teams were looking at him even at Legacy Bowl, coming to Howard to see him. He got banged up a little bit and really came back through this postseason, these showcases, and really did what he could to help his stock and help his chances. Sleeper. There's so many guys I think are sleepers. This is for the NFL level. This is for the NFL because I think there's a lot of CFL, UFL. There's already been a few guys that have got snatched up by the CFL immediately. But I think there's more to come. I think that a lot of guys that are sleepers are guys I'm thinking of like Isaiah Major.
Yeah.
Isaiah Major is a FAMU linebacker who I think will get an opportunity to prove himself. I think he really took his game to another level this year. And especially, of course, leading to a championship. But I thought that he really showed out in the Legacy Bowl. I think that he's a strong candidate to be a sleeper candidate to get a phone call after the draft, possibly. Matthew Foster, Virginia State offensive lineman. I mean, he's very, very good. I think he did a very good job of helping Virginia State really establish that backfield, even when they had injuries. It didn't seem like it. I mean, they were phenomenal on the ground. So I think that Matthew Foster is another sleeper. I'm trying to think of him. We got a wide range of talent across the school.
Yeah, I definitely want to concur with you on that. There's a lot of guys that I believe are sleepers. You know, even though the HBCU Legacy Bowl wasn't the greatest shining moment for offense, I think the two running backs, Ladarius Owens and Ian Wheeler, I believe those guys had some pretty good days with the HBCU Legacy Bowl, especially Ian Wheeler. Although he's a slightly undersized, he's a guy that can make an impact on the special teams. He's a guy that you can put him as a kick returner, you can put him as a punt returner. He's a guy that can make an impact wherever you put him. I think RJ Mobley really helped himself with the HBCU Combine, and he was one of the guys that, even though he didn't have much opportunities to make plays in the HBCU Legacy Bowl, he probably made the biggest play with that catch down the sideline. He's a guy that has size. He's a guy who is quick. He's a guy who has good hands. And I believe that RJ Mobley is a guy that could potentially get a shot. One guy on the defensive end, obviously the defensive MVP of the HBCU Legacy Bowl, Zarion Hayes, is a guy that could potentially get some looks. He has a high motor. That guy does not stop. If the play is still going, when you say play through the whistle, he is the embodiment of that. He was one of the positives of Alabama A&M's rebuild. He was very much deserving of that MVP with all of the great performances all the great defensive performances that took place in that HBCU Legacy Bowl. So there's so many guys that we could name, but I just want to get to.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 second, because I know that probably sounds cliche for us to say, but this is a year that I truly believe. Like last year, we had a good number of undrafted free agents that were signed and did their thing and were able to stick around. I think it's a repeat this year, and I don't think that's just because teams want to get guys undrafted for a cheaper price. There's an influx of players in this draft class, and it is for the next few years thanks to the COVID years and transfers and all that stuff. So we got some real talent that's going to get their name called, in my opinion, but we also have some real talent that is going to get snatched up immediately on the phone. And I think we shouldn't be surprised. This is consensus between us amongst us at Draft HBCU. And I think it should be common practice right now to believe that at the end of this weekend, we should have another 15 to 20 undrafted guys get a phone call. I don't think that's a stretch at all. I don't. I think that, we got a lot of time. We've just named a couple of guys, because I was going to say RJ Mobley, but I had a couple other names I was going to say as well. You know what I'm saying? So RJ is a couple of guys that I feel like, off the top of my head, I don't have anything in front of me. I'm just going. I can easily name 10 guys off the top of my head that I think are deserving of an undrafted free agent call. And this is just NFL. We're not talking about CFL. So, it's just being real. We got some guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't taking CFL, UFL into account either. I really think that those guys could potentially, get a shot at the NFL level, whether they make it to the final roster or not. That's up to them, or if they're on a practice squad or a training camp roster, whatever. I just believe those are guys that I really think have a chance to succeed and get a shot at any of those, prospects, but I just want to get to realistically, how many players are on an NFL training camp roster or are undrafted free agents, a realistic number, and how many players do you believe realistically can make final 52-man rosters?
The current number probably at the end of the season was in double digits. I can't tell you off the top of my head. But I do believe that in this class, especially with the offensive line and the defensive line, especially with them and the guys that we have in the secondary as well, RJ is probably my favorite, if not one of my top wide receivers. And then the linebacker group, I truly believe there's going to be a linebacker that sticks around at least one. But I think it's going to be one. I think we could probably add, with the drafted players, which I think, I'm not going to say a crazy number, I wouldn't be surprised we had 3 or 4. But I think we can get around 14 guys that can make an NFL roster to start the season, that will make an NFL roster to start the season. That's undrafted and drafted. I think that we got a couple of preferred free agents too. So I think that if you get around 3 guys drafted, get a couple PFAs and a couple undrafted guys, a couple camp tryout, maybe one of them camp guys makes it too. So I think that we'll have a good number in the NFL next year. I do think that. And I think that Davius getting his opportunity, even in recovery, says a lot, and he's going to get a shot. So I think that says a lot for the future of our guys. Well, we got a couple of guys that cross D1 and D2 that have size, that have skill, and are improving year by year. So I think that we're moving in the right direction. We'll see, but these are my predictions for this week. I think we're going to have a good number of guys get a shot.
Yeah, and I think what's encouraging is most of the guys that were a part of last year's draft class that ended up being undrafted free agents that made NFL rosters, most of them were D2 players. Emmanuel Wilson made it to the Green Bay Packers. Andrew Farmer, as we talked about, was on the Chargers. People forget Joshua Pryor from my school, of course, is with the Commanders now. He was on the sidelines for like the first 13 something weeks, and he was signed later in the season. Yeah, blocked the field goal and actually made a big play, down the stretch of the season. So I'm excited for the prospect of, our guys going forward. But that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Maliik, if you can, just let everybody know where they can follow you. I'm just going to put this up right here. And just let everybody know where they can follow you, where they can reach you if they want to, get to know you more.
Yeah, definitely. Ooh, excuse me. But yeah, definitely you can. First off, I want to appreciate you for having me on, man. Secondly, you can find me on Twitter at NFL Maliik. That's with 2 I's. NFL MALIIK. You can find us on Twitter at Draft HBCU. You can find us on Instagram at Draft HBCU Players, and you can go to our website at draftHBCUplayers.com. And this week we will have more from our draft work featured on our website and available just to get ready for this weekend. And then for those of you that aren't familiar, Draft HBCU 25, which is a video game that we drop every year, will be coming out probably July as we get ready to, for another year, great year of Black college football. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on. And best of luck to all our guys. A lot of them this year I actually got to meet, and we got a great group of guys, man. Best of luck to all of them. NFL, CFL, UFL, AFL, IFL. Keep them dreams alive, man. We got some good kids, and they're leading the next chapter in our history book. So draft HBCU Players.
Yeah, with all the football leagues that's out right now, and all the talented guys that we have, I'm excited to see who gets a shot and where they're going to be, but that's going to do it for us, guys. You can follow us at HBCU Sports on X, Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook at Real HBCU Sports, and you can always go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news in HBCU sports. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you can. Until next time, see you guys.